Do you mind just explaining what DSD is and why it potentially forms, or is it totally random?
So, like I say, it's an umbrella term, and that covers a whole set of different conditions, and in many cases medical conditions, that might need some treatment, but not all perhaps do. So these are inherited genetic things. Well, I'll just rewind slightly on what I said there. Many of them are inherited from mum and dad, as of course textbook genetics will say. That's where you get your DNA from. But in every birth of every human, there is just a few, I'll call them imperfections, but there are a few differences between the DNA of the child and the complement, the DNA of both parents put together, because nature isn't able to absolutely perfectly, faithfully copy every single letter of the 3 billion base pairs of DNA that makes up your genome from one generation to the next. So there are a few changes in every individual which are different from either of the parent. So some individuals with a DSD that genetic change has happened as one of those that is unique to them and isn't in either parent. And in other cases, it is a case of inherited things from one or other, or sometimes both parents.
So you're explaining there two categories, which you're talking about: category of trans athletes, and then the second category being DSD athletes. Am I getting that correct?
Yes.
I know this is going to be a very generalized question, but if you can, is there a way in which you can distinguish the sort of the upbringing and, I guess, puberty experience that someone that would be assigned as DSD would have?
Yeah. So there is a big variety because it depends on the type of DSD they have, and even within the type of DSD there is variability. But what one might be talking about is someone who, at the moment of birth, their sex was recorded as female, but actually unknown to the people involved, and perhaps in some parts of the world where high quality medical care is not as common during pregnancy and with an infant as well, then there would be a greater possibility of this going undiagnosed at the moment of birth. That someone might be recorded as being female, and then at some later point it might be before puberty, but often it can be around puberty. Then an individual will go through some physical development, and sometimes that will be more what you would expect in a typical male in terms of their physique, and that might also include development of external genitalia as well, that sort of that changes their appearance in that respect. And some of those individuals, leaving aside athletes for a moment, some of those individuals then, if they haven't been picked up before that, they will be, then some medical care will be provided, and then there's decision to be made by the young person, maybe their parents, medical professionals, and so on, about how they live their lives and effectively their gender identity, I suppose you could say. So that kind of describes what can happen, but there is great variability. So some people get to puberty and there is no change in their external genitalia, and if they continue to have no reason to consult medical professionals, then they grow into young women, and again there'll be a variety of different type of DSD that they might have, but some of them probably have some element of physical development that you might find in males normally, and others might have none of that. Others might have just a little bit of that, and so on. So that's where if you were going to try to regulate it, you then need to have a very detailed sort of testing regime, which is extremely problematic, in ethical terms.
If you've enjoyed that clip, then you can watch the full unedited episode by just clicking right here. Go on.